Hello, everyone. Welcome to Discourse, episode 7. I had to ask which episode we were on because I had forgotten. Been doing this for 7 weeks right now, and we're going to have a great time because we're talking about one of my favorite films from the last decade, Jordan Peele's Get Out, his 2017 horror film, which analyzes all sorts of things in our society. Racism, ignorance, how scary white people could be, rich, liberal white people. See, they always blame the hicks, the rednecks. But it's like, nah, there could even be horror in the suburbs. And I like that Jordan Peele examined that. I will say, and I want to go down the line, just ask all you guys your opinions of the movie, of course. But for myself, when I first heard that Jordan Peele, who, I know from Mad TV, his tenure on Mad TV, and also obviously his work and his friendship, his partnership with Keegan Michael Key doing the skit comedy series Key and Peele on Comedy Central, which I absolutely loved. I knew him for comedy like everyone did. And so when I heard that he was going to be doing a horror film, I'm like, I don't know. I don't buy it. I mean, it's gonna be like a comedy horror film, right? It's gonna be more like a parody movie. And although the film does have comedy, he did deliver a horror film. And I remember when because I think I recall, even on Double Toasted, that Corey Coleman and Martin Thomas and a number of other people, they reacted to the trailer and they thought it was a joke. I remember distinctly that they disliked it. And a number of other people did too. They thought, oh, this is going to be nothing. This looks comedic. It looks so over the top. This is ridiculous. It's like, oh, white people be scary. It's like, I get it. That's what people were calling the movie, making fun of her for that. But I saw the trailer. I had the opposite reaction. I thought, okay, this looks really creepy and off-putting. Yes, there's a little bit of comedy in there too, but I'm liking the imagery. I was familiar with a few actors in the film. This is before, this was the movie that made Daniel Kaluuya's career. This is what put him on the map, or like Allison Williams. But I recognize Bradley Whitford, of course, for his many roles of the past, 30 plus years at this point, anything from A Son of a Woman to Billy Madison. So I was like, okay, I like Bradley Whitford. I imagine he's going to play a bad guy because he always is cast. I was already aware of Caleb Landry Jones and Stephen Root. But for the most part, it's like, okay, it's like, hey, this is a guy's first film, happens to be a horror movie. That's how a lot of directors, they make their bones on horror films. So I thought it was cool. And then the movie came out and, it was a cultural phenomenon. I absolutely loved it. I saw it twice. Both theater experiences were so much fun. Of course, the movie was a critical and commercial success. I was reading this thing, made for $4.5 million. Went on to make like $250 million worldwide. It's one of the most massive commercial successes for an independent movie of all time. And it's remained one of my 10 favorite movies from the 2010s and one of my favorite horror films, I think, in the last 20 or so years. And it made me excited to see what Jordan Peele would do in the future. And we'll go in the details of all the characters and the scenes and the themes, but I did want to go down the line and ask you guys, how you first saw, first Jordan Peele, as in general, if you're a fan of him, were you already aware of who he was before you saw this movie? And then, how you saw the film and your general thoughts on it. We'll go ahead and we'll start with Emily at the top. What are your thoughts on the movie in general?
As a black person, it really resonated with me is, instead of going with the usual, redneck, down south, Trump supporter racism, Jordan Peele focused on, contemporary northern white, people who supported Obama or thought, that
would have voted him for a third term.
I would have voted for him for a third time. God, that line.
If I could.
Terrible.
It's so true, though. It's so true. It's so real.
I've heard that from my husband's grandmother, who I found out is pretty racist towards black people for a couple of years ago. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like how Jordan Peele, he doesn't allow white liberals to view the theft of, black bodies in this movie is, like the crazy usual type of racism like we've seen like in a Coen Brothers movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, I guess, just
any other type of film, like
Django Unchained in this context too.
Sure. No, I think he does a really good job. And it's one of the themes I want to talk about is appropriation. They were literally appropriate, not just the culture, but the bodies, their corporeal forms. because and we'll go into it, but they have a lot of, I would say, like a lot of white people that happen to live in these communities, or these rich, upper middle class. They have it examines their ignorance and the perception that they have of the advantage of being black in this specific time period that we live in right now. I think the movie does a great job with that, and we'll talk about more. But what about you, Austin, yourself? Thoughts on Jordan Peele and how you first saw this film? Your general thoughts on the movie?
Okay, so I was a bit too young to watch Key and Peele, but I remember some of the sketches, and the sketch I think I always remember and might probably be my favorite is the AA run, the teacher sketch, just because I was in high school and that did happen a lot. Nice. Substitute teachers would not know how to say people's names.
That's great. Yeah.
And I always thought Keegan Michael Key was probably the funnier one of the two, just because of seeing that sketch. And I felt like for a while they were kind of glued to the hip, and they were always like, they got Keanu, which was a pretty funny movie. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm like, okay, he's now doing a horror movie. And when I saw that, kind of, you put your head to the side, it's like, the one of the guys from Key and Peele is doing a horror movie. What? And I remember seeing a trailer. I think our teacher showed it into class like the weekend it came out. And oh wow! And I saw it with my sister and my dad. And I just remember being like surprised, and just like the theater was. I want to say, like, usually most theaters are pretty quiet. This one was bananas, and I loved it just because everyone was just during the end when Daniel Kahlua was doing this stuff. People were just flipping. I'm like, oh, like that one gif of like people are freaking out.
Of course. No, I totally get what you're saying.
And I honestly thought the movie was I really loved the movie, and I thought it was like legitimately creepy, and just the very good subtext. And at the time or a little bit later, actually I can't remember, I used to kind of work at a pool, and just like those conversations, like, oh, you're so handsome, you're so young, you're so strong. I'm like, man, you get that. Old people say that to you all the time, and it's like, well, now it has a new context after Get Out. And yeah I'm just excited for what Jordan Peele's going to make now, just because he's such an interesting, I think, director. And I'm interesting to see who he works with, and kind of these like, because I felt like this movie, we kind of started to get the rise of what's it. It was like the social thriller. I think he put.
Well, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, no, I could totally see. I mean, that might be what they're calling it now. They always come up with like a new name or a term or a subgenre within a subgenre. So if that is the case, yeah, would not be surprised. Yeah, I think like horror films have had that. They always have that, maybe social commentary. At least some of them do. But now we're definitely seeing a lot of them now. And with Jordan Peele, and there's a lot of Jordan Peele's DNA that people have taken and put into their own movies. So I totally see what you're saying. Yes.
And he's just producing so much stuff too. And like, but he still does the comedy stuff, which I'm glad. So I'm just excited to see what he does. I'm excited for his new movie.
Nope. Yeah, most recently just produced Candyman, which we could talk about that someday, because I think I'm on the opposite end of a lot of people in terms of whether they like that or not. But,
yeah, we know you hate it.
I
didn't think Us was as good as Get Out, though.
No, I agreed. I had a lot of issues with Us as well. But that doesn't say I'm not excited to see what else he's going to do in his career. What about you, Chris Ayers? Your thoughts on Jordan Peele? How you first saw the film, and just your general thoughts on the movie itself.
Yeah, I knew who Jordan Peele was before the movie came out. Like, I didn't watch every Key and Peele skit, but I watched enough that I knew who him and Key were by name. Like, I had a lot of favorites. Nick mentioned the substitute teacher. I always liked the slave auction one and the misunderstanding text one. Those are always, I got big laughs out of those. And I remember when the trailer dropped, I didn't even know that he had a movie coming out, but I saw like Jordan Peele's directorial debut drops a new trailer. And I think I saw like an image of Daniel Kaluuya and Allison Williams like smiling or whatever, and like a one sentence summary of part of the plot. So I thought, like, is this going to be like, I don't know if you guys remember that movie Guess Who with Ashton Kutcher and Bernie Mac. Yeah, which at the time I thought was an original concept, and didn't realize that it was a remake / spoof of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. But so I thought it was like, is this Jordan Peele doing like his version of that? I thought it was going to be a comedy before I watched the trailer. Yeah, plus again, Keanu had just come out. It's like, okay, this is going to be his directorial debut. It's going to be a nice, wholesome, sweet comedy that I'm going to laugh at the whole time. And then I actually watched the trailer. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And I that in the best way possible. It's like, I cannot wait to see this. And then I remember I didn't see it opening weekend because I was busy with school and stuff, but I got to see it on my birthday a couple weeks later. And yeah, I was really blown away by it. I thought he did a great job. He really proved himself as a director to do that on your first movie.
Pretty good.
To make that as big of an impact as you did and to do such a great job and get so many great performances out of all of the actors and conjure that kind of sense of dread. Yeah, it's really impressive. And yeah, I can't wait to see what he does next.
One of the points you made earlier talking about how you saw that poster, that image of Daniel Kahlua and Allison Williams like looking at each other and smiling. I'm looking at like the actual poster of Get Out right now, which is on Wikipedia, which it's a glass and it's fragmented and it's like shows different images from the film. And like that image you're talking about, it looks like a generic romantic comedy. It's like, okay, where it's just like, oh, so the girlfriend's gonna take her boyfriend to meet the family, but he's a black man and she's white. There's gonna be some awkward humor involved. So it definitely looks like that. And even, I mean, the movie even goes into that though too. Like there's we'll talk about it more. There's a lot of comedy in this film, and I think that really helps it. I think horror and comedy go hand in hand. Extremely well, more often than not. But yeah, I love that you have that there. And I mean, the whole thing, the idea that Jordan Peele, that's what I wanted to mention, because you said that like what a debut. He's in a weird place though, because I think as a filmmaker, when your first movie is so good and everyone loves it, and it's nominated for Academy Awards, and people are buying the Blu-ray, everyone's talking about it, that must be so intimidating that it's like, fuck, how do I follow this up? Like I have all these ideas, but that's your golden egg right there. Mm-hmm. And how do I replicate that? Because I wasn't the biggest fan of Us. Some of his stuff that he's produced, I haven't been a big fan of. I tried to check out Twilight Zone. I was like, I just didn't care for it. So what if he finds himself, and I'm not saying like they're the same, but what if he finds himself in a weird place like, because I think he's better than this guy, but like Neil Blomkamp, where your first film is so goddamn good, but then your next ones are just, they don't measure up in any capacity. So I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I think he's already put himself in a good place, because I think one of the problems with Blomkamp's movies is that I feel like he keeps trying to recapture District 9, and as a result with each of his movies, I feel like I'm following the same characters over and over again. I'm listening to you repeat the same themes over and over again. With what Peele's done with Us, like Get Out and Us are pretty different. Like they definitely have their similarities because it's same director and writer and everything, but they're talking about different ideas and themes, and they're following different types of characters. And so I think so far he's been doing a good job about keeping his movies distinct from each other. It's like, all right, I know which movie is which, I know what's from what, and hopefully with his new movie he keeps doing that.
You're right, and the scenarios in both films are obviously different, which helps. Really the only thing that he keeps the same is he gets like a pop or an R&B song and slows it down. That's like the only thing that is consistently the same, and I imagine that'll be the same for Nope. But Jacob, Thunderly, what about yourself, sir? How did your opinions on Jordan Peele, how you originally saw this movie, and your general thoughts on it?
I first saw Jordan Peele when I was very young in Mad TV. I don't remember much from that time. I love Mad TV, but I don't remember much of his skits. It wasn't until Key and Peele where I was like, him and Keegan Michael Key is hilarious. So like, it caught me by surprise when Jordan Peele was making a horror film that I was like, kind of iffy about it, because at the time I was in high school, and so like I wasn't really all about this progressive movement at the time, which now I really don't care. Like honestly, anything's good if it's positive. But I was iffy about it, And I talked to my English teacher, who is one of my favorites, and we was talking about Jordan Peele's Get Out, and we watched that trailer, and she was like, I think you should watch it. Like, you're a horror fan, plus I think everybody could learn something from this. And honestly, when I saw it, the release weekend, it was a Saturday night, and I saw that. I came out really like creeped out by the movie, but I loved it and understood what she was talking about. And I came back to her like, "Yep, you're definitely right. Jordan Peele makes a lot of sense." And yeah, I truly think that this movie, like, opened a lot of eyes to the social issues, also how different Jordan Peele wanted to be at the time, because he was mostly known for the comedy, and he also basically opened the doors for other people in the the comedy space to like work in horror, like David Gordon Green and Danny McBride for Halloween, like, and was it how the guy from Don't Breathe? Oh, not Don't Breathe.
I'm not familiar with that director.
No, not Don't Breathe. I'm sorry.
I think Fede Alvarez. Fede Alvarez had already he had done horror films beforehand.
A Silent Place or something. I forgot the movie.
Oh, Quiet Place. Oh, you mean Quiet Place. John Krasinski. Yeah.
Like, he was also in comedy too, so like that opened the doors for a lot of people to like, be different. And
well, I think really keep going.
I just finished it. Sorry.
Okay. No, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, it's it's always good just to not to pigeonhole somebody just because they've worked in a specific genre for years, even decades. I mean, I think Jordan Peele, Keegan Michael Key were like, they were on Mad TV. I want to say in the even earlier mid 2000s. They've been around for a while, I feel like. And then obviously doing their sketch comedy show from like, the early 2010s to mid 2010s. I forget when it specifically ended, but felt like it was around the time when Get Out had come out, right? I feel like that's when they ended it. Or maybe just beforehand. It just goes to show, it's like, even though someone most of their work has been the genre, just don't discount them. Just say like, it's weird when they go into a totally different genre, but at the same time, I think they can bring something fresh to it. And we've seen this with certain people. We've seen this with obviously with David Gordon Green and John Krasinski, and obviously with Jordan Peele. That's good. Sometimes if you have someone who's just constantly within a genre for so many years, maybe that can become stale. I mean, Chris Ayers, you brought up earlier with Neil Blomkamp saying like he just tried to do the same thing 3 times. It's like South African dystopia. It's like, okay, we get it. All right, do something new. Which I know he did something new recently, but I have not seen it. But I've heard it's not great.
I'm not hearing the best things at all.
So maybe I'll see it someday, but I don't think I'm in any rush. But Cassie, what about yourself? Your opinions on Jordan Peele as an artist, and how you saw this film, and your general thoughts on it.
Well, I was watching a lot of Key and Peele in the 2010s, so I definitely knew who he was, and I really had a lot of respect for that show and the comedy as well as the commentary that was in it. So when I heard that Jordan Peele was making a horror film, I was immediately intrigued, because it's been said that if you're good with comedy, with how difficult that is to achieve, you're going to be even better with drama. And like, I don't know how often that is actually true, but with him, it was definitely true. And I went to go see that movie in theaters just because it seemed like everybody was, and the curiosity was overwhelming, and I'd say it definitely more than lived up.
Yeah.
I love the atmosphere of it. I love how it's so good at making you uncomfortable in all the right ways. And I haven't seen any of his other movies, but I still want to.
I encourage you to check them out. I want to see what your opinions are on them. Because I know some people like really love Us. They love it as just as much, or even in some cases even more than Get Out. I was not the biggest fan of the film. I admire it on a technical level, and I still feel like it's able to creates that uncomfortable atmosphere as you're talking about. Like that, I like that you brought that up, because this movie, even before like the weird horror stuff happens, and transplanting brains and having basically a slave auction. I like it's that typical awkwardness when you're going to meet your loved one's family, and you don't agree with them for various reasons, and they try to kind of appeal to you, but they come off offensive, and you're just trying to maintain the peace. Like, there's so many of those little scenes, some of these like little phrases, like you even have like Bradley Whitford where he's going on about how long has this thing been going on, trying to use like slang, and it's like, oh, the cringe. And Chris is like, he's just laughing it off. He's like, well, let me tell you. So I love that, but it's all these big warning signs at the front, but we just go with it. Oh, it's this typical weird in-law awkwardness. So I'm glad you brought that up beforehand. But Xavier, good to see you, by the way. Hope you're doing well. We're just kind of going on over our general thoughts of Jordan Peele and the film itself. But what about yourself, sir? How did were you familiar with Jordan Peele beforehand? How did you first see this movie, and what are your general thoughts?
Yeah, so I know Jordan Peele mostly from Mad TV. I didn't really watch too much of Key and Peele.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of it, and I know like the sketches, but I just never watched it regularly. I love Get Out. Get Out is probably my favorite. If someone was to ask me like, what is your favorite movie of all time? Get Out's probably the first movie that I think of.
Wow, okay.
I've seen this movie about 4 or 5 times in theaters. And
Damn.
Each time the experience was different because
Mm-hmm.
I think when I first saw it, it was pretty quiet. Like, even with all the twists, it was pretty quiet. But then there was one time where it was just like crazy. Everyone was screaming, theater etiquette went out the window. So, but it was a really fun time. But it was probably one of my most fun times being in the theater, just being around everyone with those reactions. But yeah, I rewatched it today. This is the first time I watched it in a really long time, and even now, I know what's going to happen, and it still keeps me on the edge of my seat. It's even more disturbing, and I'm still finding things that I didn't notice the first time. Like even like the whole beginning scene that we were talking about. Like you notice that, at least for me, I noticed that the father. He has like these tics. Like he almost like he doesn't know how to like talk to people or something. Like he's like, oh, let's show you around the house, and then but the girlfriend's like, oh, shouldn't you put your bags away? And he's like, oh yeah, shouldn't you put your bags away? It's almost like he doesn't know how to operate or whatever. But yeah, I just really like this movie, and yeah, I can't wait to talk more about it.
That's a good point that you bring up with like how the family is so awkward and weird and the tics and things. It's because they probably don't, because this is the whole thing, it's a facade because it's a trap. You realize later on, and they're trying to maintain this normalcy, even though they're all individually like really fucked up with each other. And so, but you're right. If you can watch this film, you can really watch it multiple times. And there's always like a new detail, and there's things that other people have spotted, like you just spotted, and they can go into detail about that. Like I think I watched it was like a YouTube video or something. It was a fan speculation for Get Out, like after the movie had come out like a year afterwards and got all the accolades and shit. And it was Jordan Peele like going through all these fan theories or things that they noticed, and he's like, "Yep, that's exactly what I intended it to be." I was like, "That's an interesting interpretation." And then yeah, it's a movie that you can watch multiple times and be rewarded each time. And thankfully, it's relatively short. That it's not like a long watch. You're not going to waste your day having to sit down and watch this movie because of its pacing, because of its relatively short length, under 2 hours.
One of my favorite theories from that video is the one, I think it was like the first one, where they say that this whole situation is in Rod's mind, the TSA agent, and Jordan Peele's like, yeah, that's not true. This all really happened. But still imagine, right?
He said a couple of the theories. It was like, yeah, a lot of y'all smoke a lot of weed.
Oh, is that what he said? Is that what he said?
For some of those theories, because they were really out there. There was one where what was it? I think it involved Rose and the whole how she was trapping people thing, and they're like, yeah, that's not what I came across, or I'm not sure how you got that theory. Like some of those are really, really good. It's amazing how people just come together and just noticing all these little details all throughout the movie, even on several rewatches. It's always a different experience, as everyone else has said.
Yeah, it's just fun to speculate too. At the end of the day, just go into details and the history. I mean, I did. You know what? I wanted to go into the themes right now, but I want to ask you. This is just open, at this point. It'll just be like open floor. Speak up if you want to. Give everyone a chance to talk, obviously. But for toss of the theater experience, you know, when I first saw, because I saw this twice in the theater, I want to say, and I own it on Blu-ray. I'm gonna show it to friends since then who haven't, watched in the theater, who are unfamiliar with it, maybe. And going on like, Jordan Peele, you crazy? What? No horror film? Even after the movie had come out, but people who are not like us nerds who like talking about movies and cartoons and anime and things and video games. But I want to talk about just briefly like our theater experiences, because when I first saw this, I mean, there is a lot of comedy in here. It's like, yes, it's a horror film. There's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of laughs, and they are intentional laughs. But I remember when I first saw this movie, both times when I saw this movie, theater was laughing consistently throughout it. But at the end, it always stuck with me, where I thought this was really, really cool. And it's really interesting. And it's a kind of a sad cultural fact. But at the end of the movie, where Daniel Kahlua is basically trying to kill Allison Williams Rose after she was hunting him along with her grandfather and things, and choking her to death, the cops come up. You hear the siren, or you hear the siren, you think, and you see the cop thinking that those are the lights of a police car. And typically in a horror film, when you see that's like, oh, thank God the police in here. They can stop whatever's going on. But in this case, it was very different. Wherever you can literally hear everyone go, oh no, or everyone start to like breathe in or gasp and stuff, because you realize like, oh, because Daniel Kaluuya's character he's a black man, that the police are going to think he's responsible for all this carnage, and he's going to be arrested, he's going to be shot. And where we typically always view the police in a horror film as, well, they're the good guys here to save the day. And I love that reaction, because it speaks of, sadly, the culture that we live in. It was that was incredible. And I wonder if Jordan Peele meant for that moment. I mean, clearly I think he meant for that moment to be that moment. Even when you see Chris put his hands up, whereas in any other horror film or whatever, the white, typically the white kid would be like, I'm going to finish the job. And the police would like, I'm going to double tap just to make sure. So did anyone have that experience when they first, I feel like some of you hinted at that before. Did you have that experience when at that scene?
I've lived through that experience in real life, the whole cops and having to put my hands up. I've gone through that whole experience. I had a gun pulled on me a couple years ago by a cop for mistaken identity and other bullshit and whatnot. It's just a really fucked up situation.
So you probably really related to that scene then?
Yes, so much.
Did anyone else's like theater have like a similar reaction that mine did both times? I was just curious.
My theater had that reaction. Like literally, like we was all enjoying the movie, and it wasn't until like that end where a collective like, oh, like happened.
Yeah.
And then when his friend got out of the car, the airport police car,
TSA agent,
car, we was all just cheering, because honestly, like that was the moment that made me understand things. Honestly.
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, okay, he's safe now. But like it would have been different if they had that alternate ending in the plays. Like that would have been the weirdest like silence in the theater if they had that alternate ending.
I mean, it would have left the audiences feeling so down. So I understand why they won't. It's funny. I've always heard about these guys. I think there's two alternate endings, right? There's the one where he is arrested and he goes to jail, and he's visited by Rod. And I think I don't know if this one was filmed, but I know Jordan Peele has talked about it, where Rod, he goes to the Armitage residence, breaks in looking for Chris, and he finds him, but Chris has been lobotomized basically, and where he responds going like, "There's no Chris here, sir." And it's sounding like Stephen Root's character of Hudson. Yeah,
that would have been so insulting. I think more so than him going to prison, just him just like being changed and just like, oh fuck.
It's a downer ending. But a lot of horror films end with a downer ending. So, but I think he made the right choice, because that would have been like, oh Jesus, he would have felt really sad. So
yeah, as far as I know, that ending of Rod coming up to the house and seeing Chris as lobotomized, that was written but not shot. But okay, yeah, the prison ending was definitely shot. And I remember It was a combination of two things, I think, that caused Peele to decide to change it. One was seeing, because it was a test screening, and one was seeing how the test audiences reacted to the ending. You know, they were kind of like, ah, god damn it. And then the other one was Jason Blum, who was the producer on the movie, like, basically coming up to him and talking to him about it afterwards, because from what I know, the way Blumhouse works is when you're directing and writing a movie for them, you get complete creative freedom, you get final cut, you get to make the movie exactly the way you want to, as long as you give him a pitch that he likes and you promise not to go over budget. That ending was in the script, they shot it, Blum didn't have a problem with it, but then once he saw how the movie was put together and the way Jordan had told the story, and then seeing the ending and running it all back in his head, he realized, like, oh shit, we can't go with this ending. And then after the screening ended, he ran up to Jordan and said, no, you cannot put him in jail. People will fucking hate that. Please, please change it. And to Jordan's credit, he was in a position where he had final cut, so he could have easily said, no, I'm happy with this ending the way it is. I'm keeping it. But instead, he told Blum, just give me a couple days to think about it. And then a couple days later, he came back and said, I've got the new ending figured out. And then they reshot it, and that's the ending that's in the final movie.
Wow. Look at that. That's cool. No, thanks for providing that context. I had no idea that was the case. I thought that I always thought that maybe he just shot two endings and like, oh, which one do I go with? So that's amazing. No, thanks for that detail. I mean, in regards to Jason, man, Blumhouse is so weird. Like Blum. I mean, that's awesome that he gives those people. I mean, obviously, filmmakers so much creative freedom. I mean, that's especially unique, you know, especially in this era of huge franchise filmmaking. But man, the quality levels for a Blumhouse film. It goes from 180 constantly back and forth into something amazing like Get Out or something awful like The Gallows. So that's crazy.
It's funny.
It varies. Go ahead.
It's funny to me because like you see the budgets on most of these Blumhouse films and they're very like low budget films. Like they're not made for like billions of dollars. They're made for like 4 million, like Halloween and Get Out, and they make a lot of money. It's just that's why I admire Blumhouse, because they take chances, but not everything's gonna be like, oh, we're gonna make money like every movie.
Yeah, well, I think they get a Fantasy Island or like, you know, something kind of shitty, but you know, every once in a while there's like a nugget of gold.
Well, it's weird, but I think with them, you know, I mean, because their budgets are so low, that's why Blum gives all the filmmakers so much creative freedom, because it's like, we're going to make money back no matter what, you know, because as long as you keep it $5-10 million, we're good. We're going to make 25-30 million once it hits theaters, all that stuff on VOD. So he has a system figured out clearly. So.
Yeah. And the quality, because of that, I think the quality ultimately does really come down to who's writing or directing it, because like you guys said, the quality varies so much. Sometimes we'll get, you know, the masterpieces like Get Out and Whiplash and Black Klansman. And then there's, you know, the fun movies like Happy Death Day and Insidious and The Visit. There's the movies where it's like, I get what you're trying to do and it's an interesting idea, but it just doesn't really work for me. Like I'd say the first Paranormal Activity or Unfriended or one of those movies. And then, there's just the god-awful movies. Fantasy Island, Truth or Dare, the Lazarus Effect, The Gallows, so ultimately, I think it really does depend on who's in the captain's chair, who's writing it, and who's directing it. And a lot of times, like there's some crap, but other times we get awesome stuff like this.
Thank God for that too. Moving on from that, so that's cool. Thanks for providing some context and opinions on that, guys. Appreciate that. That's good. But I figure now we can move on to like the themes of the movie. We can talk about whatever we want, certain scenes, how they apply to these themes and things. But I did want to admit, you know, I mean, the main, obviously one of the biggest themes of this movie is racism, but not in the context that we usually see in a lot of movies. Like, you know, we say at the top, like a lot of times when we see racism in, you know, a lot of films or big Hollywood films or what have you, it's always takes place like in the South, always dealing with Hicks, rednecks, the Ku Klux Klan, that kind of thing. Always, a lot of the times a period piece. But I love that Jordan Peele, he did not do that. He tackled racism, the subtlety of modern day racism, not even coming from who you would typically think of who are the racists, but no, it's these, either rich or middle class or upper middle class, white liberals and their ignorance. And it's kind of what I said earlier, where it's a lot of these people's perceptions that, there's, black people, they have an advantage now. Like there's a literal line in the movie, and it's such a great scene. There's so many great scenes in this film. We could pick them apart, scene by scene by scene by scene. But there's that one scene where Rose is introducing Chris to all of her family's friends, and they go up to that. I mean, a lot of the characters, but that one guy where he's like, "Black is in fashion," and that's how they view. That's how they view black people or their skin or their culture. It's like, well, it's the fashionable thing nowadays. It's so unique, and it's popular with the kids. And
can I touch your hair?
Yeah, can I touch your hair? Can I touch you? Like you have that woman grabbing Chris and like feeling him, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fuck you later once I put my old decrepit husband's brain in your body. It's all, and the thing is, like, I've seen these things. I've seen awkward conversations where a lot of the, like in my case, it was. And, an older, elderly white woman going like, how do you do your hair that way? I've always liked that. It's always so interesting to me. And then, the black person's like, well, like, and this is true. And I'm sure Jordan Peele also experienced that, whether himself or he saw it. I think famously I think I follow him on a social media platform. And he took a picture. He was at like a house party or something. And I guess he was implying that this family was not black, but they have all this art, which is, has racist depictions of black people and things like, stuff from the South, like, big
lips, giant noses.
Yes. Oh God, what's the minstrels, like minstrels. Yes. And that kind of thing. And so yeah, he's obviously experienced this, and that clearly had a huge impact on him writing this. But what is everyone's just opinion on him tackling racism this way? We don't often see, especially from very liberal Hollywood. I mean, I'm trying to think of I'm sure there's cases in movies that have done this, but not to the degree like this movie has. But your general impressions on that, and whether you thought that was refreshing or not. And the floor is open to anyone to speak.
I thought it really. Oh, I'm sorry. You can go first, Allison.
Thank you. So I actually got reminded. So, over the summer I was doing an anthropology. Well, it was like a race, and it was basically under anthropology, but without race. And I had to do a whole presentation about a chapter of the textbook, and it was basically about racism, but it discussed kind of what Chris was discussing earlier. It was called soft racism, where it's this that possesses racial differences as culture rather than biological, but still views as differences as immutable or insurmountable. And I remembered, I'm like, oh right, I used Get Out as an example of what soft racism is, and I think it's really well explored in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a lot of that, like, sort of. It's not like it's and where it's kind of about where it isn't like openly. It isn't. It's hard to put this in words, but it isn't like you hate them, but more so that you put on stereotypes, but don't think of them as human. If that makes sense. You're like, oh, you're all these things, but you're not a person. I don't view you as a person.
No, you're perfectly defining it. I think that's exactly what Peele is clearly indicating with the Armitage family. Like that's how they view. Like they literally view Chris as something to be traded and sold. But we're not racist. We just want your body. That it's like they don't think of themselves as racist, but they're still indulging in stereotypes and defining Chris' character or black people in general by their stereotypes throughout the movie. They just think that they're better than those hicks or their rednecks. So you're absolutely right. That is the case. So no, very, very excellent points, man. Excellent points. Anyone else want to just talk about the theme of racism in the movie?
I think the theme of racism in this movie, this is more so the kind of racism I grew up experiencing, because I didn't grow up in the South. I grew up in Minnesota and whatnot, and people up here, they're a lot more subtle about their racism than people are down South. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about that. And just, it it really resonated with me that there were so many of my experiences growing up in this movie and whatnot, and how he touched upon those things. Like the whole party scene just makes me so fucking uncomfortable to watch that fucking basically modern era slave trade in a freaking movie and whatnot. And the whole him being off while he's distracted and whatnot. They're auctioning him off. Like, I quickly figured out what was going on there with the guy not, like I noticed that when Chris leaned in, the guy who was what was his name? Andre was kidnapped in the beginning of the movie. He shook his hand instead of like fist bumping him. That's how I greet other black people. That's how we greet each other. But I noticed that, and it's like, oh, something's wrong here. I'm like, get out, man! Like the title of the movie, you need to get out. There's so many things wrong here, and the people touching him and asking him, oh, what do you do? And, like then the mom, another example, the mom wanting him to stop smoking because your body is a temple. And it's not because they care about your health. It's because they want you to be as healthy as possible when they body snatch you.
There is, it's all those subtleties, and I mean, there's so many of those scenes in the movie because I didn't realize it like watching the first, second, or third time. It's just watching YouTube videos, people like really dissecting the movie, and there was one I'm like, oh shit, that makes so much sense. But it's right in the beginning when they're going to Rose's family home, and it's when they're pulled over by the cop after they hit the deer, and there's the one where the cop he asks for Chris's ID. And Rose, it's so subtle, and you think it like, oh, it's because it's a triumphant scene at the end, where she goes, you don't need to see his ID, he wasn't driving, and and the cop's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, and they get back in the car, and Chris is really turned on by, hey, you defended me. She's like, I'm not gonna let them go after my man, and you think, oh, it's a nice little scene, but really what it is, she doesn't want to create a fucking paper trail.
Yeah,
that's what that is. So the cops investigate him. They don't want to know who he is and his information, and that's why she didn't want to have the cop have his ID or anything. And I was like, that is so fucking clever, and shows how diabolical she is, and just the whole family, and how she's a hunter. That's what she is in the movie.
Also, Rose, she's a monster. What kind of sicko sits there and eats cereal out of a bowl with no milk, and the milk is in the glass right next to you, and you're drinking it like it's orange juice just scrolling through for new victims and people to kill.
Right.
Like, so you sick monster.
Especially the top NCAA prospects.
Yes.
That's the most horrifying scene in the movie. Is the fucking milk and cereal scene.
No, like Osik, you said, that is that one I didn't understand. I think all the audience got that one when we first saw. But you're right, Osik. Yeah, where the whites and the colors are separate. I was like, oh, that's what you do, eating Fruit Loops.
But I would ask, why does she? But okay, I get she has to separate the whites from the colors. But why does she eat it? Not just one at a time. She actually takes a piece of the cereal and bites it in half. Like, that makes no sense. And it doesn't make, it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Maybe it's symbolism for what they're about to do to Chris. They're about to separate, his essence from his body, basically. Kind of. Maybe.
I'm actually glad you brought this up, M. Xavier, because I want to talk about there's so many characters in this movie, and we can all go into such detail with them. But we can, in regards to Rose, I feel like she's obviously stunted emotionally because she has been wrapped. I mean, her and her brother. You think like the brother's the one who's is the weird one out of the two, but she's actually far more fucked up and weirder than he is. In hindsight, it's like, yeah, she's the really messed up one. Where how she eats it and she becomes almost like childlike sometimes. I think she's like an emotionally stunted. And she, because of the weird, messed up family dynamic that she lives in, and what she's been taught to, and she's so emotionally distant. The reason why she's emotionally distant is because her task is to go out there and find these black people to then bring back and to be used to be sold to the highest bidder in this weird Knights Templar organization, and to be replaced. Have their minds be replaced by these older white people. And I think that has affected her to the degree where she doesn't know how to have an emotional connection to anything because she's been doing this for so long. And she's just weird.
But not only that, she has to, or I don't know if obviously we don't know the story, but like she goes out and like gets an emotional connection to these people. Whereas Jeremy, he obviously seems to just ride up and just grab people, I guess. Whereas she's like building a relationship, which is even more, I don't know, difficult, and like,
Yeah.
and she has to do all this crazy stuff. So yeah,
I think that's
Well,
why
I
she's
think-
fucked up.
I think
Yeah, even
she's
more fucked up.
trying to. I think in some ways maybe she's trying to have some semblance of romance in her life, and I think her character's also meant to explore the fetishization aspect, because she's all like, "Oh, you're the only black person I've ever dated," and then he sees all those freaking pictures, and
Yeah.
later she's like, "You were one of my favorites," basically
Mhm.
saying he was an object.
Yeah.
She's like a bit like a praying mantis, where she'll make love and then she'll cut your head off.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. No, good points. Good points, bro.
One of the most frustrating scenes was when she was eating the cereal and she like types in, like top NCAA prospects. I was like, oh my god, this is just driving me crazy.
That got a good laugh from the audience when I saw it both times.
Yeah,
it's a really funny scene.
It was funny, but it was also like just real like disturbing at the same time. It was like,
Sure.
wow, these people are just crazy. Like this
They have a
insane.
method. They have a method. They know who they want to go with. They want the best subjects possible. What's also really funny about that, one of the pictures she clicks on, I think that's the last picture. It's Keegan Michael Key. So he is in the movie. He is technically in the movie. It's his cameo. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
his
didn't
cameo.
catch that. Holy shit.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, that's
I need to
pretty
see that.
good. Yeah. I think he's in either the last picture or one of the pictures that she clicks on. But I mean, does anyone else have any other points they want to bring up in regards to the racism or how they handle racism in the movie?
Rose
I
with
thought
the whole. Oh, sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Rose with the whole shotgun thing. She's like, my dad isn't going to chase you out of the house with a shotgun. It turns out it's her chasing him out of the house at the end of the movie. So
That's
that's like another whole thing about the racism I noticed there.
No, that's a good point.
And
That was pretty
the
goddamn
thing
funny.
that saved him at the end of the day too.
Mm-hmm. It was Cotton. That's the thing. The thing that set him free was fucking Cotton. That was amazing. Where he manages to plug up his ears with that. No, that was nuts. Yeah, you want to say something?
Well, I was just gonna say that. I thought that by him tackling the more like, I guess, like liberal racism or soft racism was refreshing, not only for just horror movies in general, but I think also for the society at the time, because I think at the time a lot of people were like, oh, racism is only in the South, and it's like the Hicks and stuff like that. And it's like, no, racism is everywhere. And I think that's why this tackling it from that end was definitely needed.
It made it fresh. Because we've seen it, racism tackled even in these very heavy-handed ways. But it's like it's kind of like you become numb to it. It's like, oh yeah, I know. But this one, the way they did it, it's like, oh shit, I've seen this before. Yeah. Or you may have said something that is similar to what they have said. It's like, oh my god, it makes you realize that. I think that's good.
Yeah, and Peele's even said like he didn't want to go. He specifically made sure not to set the movie in the South, because I think some people thought it was taking place in Alabama or whatever. And he's very clear, like, no, this is nowhere near the South. I don't want to do that. I've seen that kind of movie hundreds and hundreds of times.
Right.
I want to focus on the type of racism that doesn't get shown in film there very often, like the more subtle kind of racism from people who like to put on the act or like to think that they're being helpful towards minorities, but in reality they're just causing more damage, which makes it even more fucked up and sinister in a way.
Yeah, I'm not racist. I have one black friend kind of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, totally agree. There, you know what? The only character who I feel like is in the movie who, because how this whole thing started, we can go into it more. But it's the elder Armitage family member who we only see in the video, explaining what the order of the coagula is to Chris and presumably other victims. I'm trying to remember, I think it's his name was Roman, because he's in the body of Walter, the groundskeeper. That's because so their
grandfather.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's Roman, the grandfather. Where I feel like because you even have Stephen Root's character at one point, because Chris asked him, like, why black people? And Stephen Root's like, I don't fucking know. I don't understand, man. I'm not racist, but I don't know. I feel like the reason why Roman is the one who was started this whole thing about getting all these black people is because he lost to Jesse Owens in the Olympics in 1930, was it 1930? I forget which year, but I think that was the degree. He's like, I hate that black man. I'm gonna take his body. Even you see him running in the movie within the body of Walter, trying to beat Jesse Owens' time. He's so fucking obsessed with that. So I think it was all obviously it's all based in racism.
36. It was 36.
36.
Jealous old man.
Thank you, Austin. So yeah, I feel like that was kind of the inciting incident, because I did want to move on to going off of Roman and the organization. Like, they call it the Order of the Coagula. But I was reading, I was watching, I think it was one of those YouTube videos about, or maybe it might have been, it was like an article, and Jordan Peele's, it was an interview with him, or it could have been a video. But he was saying, like, this organization is this is the Knights Templar, who are obsessed with immortality and trying to attain that. And he just they finally found it. This order, this division of the Knights Templar finally managed to get that. And it was just brain transfer, or parts of your brain are transferred into another body, and you continue on. And I was like, that was really fucking cool. And it sets up, and I like lore, like, ooh, this has been around for a while, and this influenced this, and this in like a horror film or something. And I think it's really cool that this organization has been around for hundreds of years. And they're doing this, and they finally perfected, at least at the moment, they think they've perfected their version of immortality. And this is what made me excited. Like, I know he's going to do, because this is me just assuming. It makes my ass out of me. Where I thought this was all going to carry into his other films. He was going to have the Jordan Peele universe, because everyone needs a universe. And so when Us had come out, or this trailer was shown, and I was like, oh, I see what this is. This must be like another experiment of the Knights Templar. It's going to be connected to Get Out. It's going to be all, and it wasn't. It has nothing to do with Get Out. I don't think they even take place in the same world or anything. They could, but nothing is indicated that they do. But I love that. I mean, general thoughts on this, the Order of the Coagula, which coagula is it's a mass or a clot. And so I always thought, is that because they put the part of the brain, it's put in the other, and then the victim's head, and it's that's the mass, that's the clot, and it's the order because we take over these bodies. I don't know. You can read it anyway, but anyone's impressions on this organization. Do you want to see them return in another Jordan Peele movie? I feel like I would love to see more of them, but that's just me.
Okay. So I just want to go back to so I always thought of it was it was an obsession with Jesse Owens because he beat him in that race. And it was just an obsession. It's why are these people better than us? And it wasn't so much that, why was this person better than me? Why was, black people, why were black people better? And that's sort of where the whole thing came. I didn't know it was the Knights Templar, but yes, I would like to see. It was interesting. I did wonder if there was other parts of it, were there, this part of it did the brain transfers things, but were there other parts maybe
doing other experiments?
Doing experiments elsewhere in the world, because racism in North America, I would say, is different than racism in Europe.
Sure. Anywhere. Yeah.
So what? And it's how deep? Well, how deep does this go? Is this just other? Because you see a bunch of old people, and you could do actually kind of wonder, was this their first body? Was it, have they done this before?
Point.
Yeah, how long has it been going on for?
Yeah.
I guess
No, I was
just gonna say, and then you can go, Jacob. But I think the Roman is the one who invented the brain transfer thing. At least that's implied. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's been going for a lot longer.
Well,
but they clearly been trying
the
to find
hypnotism and the brain transfer.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
No. I'm just saying yes. No. Yeah. You're right. You're right about that. But Jacob, you wanted to say something?
I feel like there's, because by the end of the movie when they show Roman talking about the thing, that's an old clip. So who knows if anybody else is, learned the same technique from that time to then to the moment where Chris practically murders the whole family. you don't know if there's other people out there that knows how to do it too. So I feel like there's a lot more they could tell out of that story.
Yeah, that's why I was, and this is just a selfish thing. That's why I was hoping that Us was going to be, because then I saw the movie, it had nothing to do with it. But I thought it would have been really cool if it was kind of connected. It's just, but this details is another branch and one of their failed experiments. But that was not the case, obviously. But yeah, there is opportunity to, expand it if he wishes to. But we'll see.
I would like to see a prequel, maybe, even though it probably wouldn't be. Because I assume that the prequel would be, showing them experimenting on black people, but but I would like to see how this even got started. Like we assume that it's because he lost to Jesse Owens, but like how far did that hatred go? Like how crazy did he go down this path?
Sure. No, that's a good point. Yeah, it could be any number of things or reasons. The Jesse Owens things was just a drop in a bucket of a whole list of other things that have influenced him and this family or these members for years, centuries, even. So yeah, this is cool. I just really like this organization and would like to see them be explored more thoroughly in the future. But we may not. This might be it. This might be the only time.
Can I chime in? I as much as I want him to continue it, right? As there's a lot of story that could be told, I kind of do want Jordan Peele to like really continue, doing his own stuff, like making these stories that do cover of racism or social, stuff. Yeah, social issues.
Yeah, I feel like that's always going to be a part of his films. I mean, definitely, it was a part of Us, and for Nope, I don't know. I mean, I imagine it will be, but we'll have to see. And all those works that he's either written or produced or co-produced. We saw that recently in Candyman. So I feel like he's always going to have those kind of socially relevant messages in all of his horror films or films in general. He might delve into other genres someday. Who knows? Might not. I mean, now he's a lot of people look at him. He's the new horror maestro. Horror master, modern day horror master.
That's kind of asking. That's kind of saying a lot when he only has
I agree.
films under his belt and like a couple producing stuff.
I would, because that's when people started labeling him that. I'd be like, let's take it easy. let's wait, and then we can start announcing labels. I think he made an incredible first movie. I think Get Out is. I'll say. I'll reiterate at the end, but I do think it's a masterpiece. I do. I was like, wow, it's one of my favorite films of the previous decade. It's in my top 10. I think it's great. But moving on from did anyone else want to talk about any other themes or things, or the organization, or is there any other details before we start delving into the? We have talked about the characters already, but anything else before we get into the nitty gritty details of any of the main characters?
Well, I was just going to point out, I liked the imagery of like nature and also the use of deer throughout the movie, like when they hit the deer, and then when the dad goes on a whole speech about how he doesn't like them, they're ruining the ecosystem, and he wants them all to die, basically. Like really good foreshadowing there. And later, Chris uses a deer to kill him, so it's very karmic.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And yeah, because that could totally be like how he's talking about, the deer could be, it's like, oh, it's black people that are doing this. They're coming in, they're moving in, and they're doing all these things. And it's like, yeah, you could definitely see it that way. And then, yeah, the fact that he's killed by the deer at the end, that was very amusing. Again, that was one of those things I just didn't get when I first saw the movie the second time. And it had to be explained to me. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. But no, I love that. And that's like the first big warning sign when that fucking deer is hit, and he's like, oh, because it seems so ordinary, like, oh yeah, of course, you hit a deer on the road, and I mean, it sometimes happens and things, but he was already off put by that. It was already weird, and so I think he also views that deer as as his mother who died on the side of the road. And we're kind of already doing this, so this is actually good. I'm glad you brought this up, Casfe. We can already kind of get into the details of some of the characters, and I think it's appropriate to start with Daniel Kaluuya's Christopher Washington, where I think I'm speaking for myself, but this was the first movie or anything with Daniel Kaluuya that I became aware of him as an actor. I don't think I had seen him in anything before this. If I did, I can't recall it at all. So I think it was a huge revelation for me. You know, he was nominated for an Academy Award for this. He got a lot of love for his performance. And again, I think he does well in all the dramatic scenes and the more chaotic scenes, especially towards the third act of the movie. But I just love the subtlety of his performance too in the beginning, where he's very much an everyman character. He's the audience avatar. We react in the same way in which he reacts to all of these scenarios that he finds himself in. Whether it's like, you know, saying like that bitch is crazy, when we have Georgina start saying no. I was like, what the hell's going on here? He reacts naturally. But then he also pulls those incredible emotional dramatic moments when talking about, and it's kind of going on about the deer and how he sees his mother in the deer. That moment when he's being hypnotized by Missy, the famous scene where he goes into the sunken place for the first time, like when he's just crying and he's clawing at the chair. It's I think it's a really beautiful performance and one of the great hero characters in a modern horror film. But does anyone have anything to say about Daniel Kaluuya's performance and his character of Chris Washington in the movie?
I thought he was great. His performance was at times it was. I didn't know he was for one. I didn't know he was. Is he British? I didn't know he was British.
Yeah.
I was like, so that confused me the first time I heard him talk. You know, after the movie was done, I was like, holy shit, he's British. That's cool.
His accent is impeccable.
I'm not sure what other things he's been in, but this is the first time I'd seen him ever in acting and whatnot. I thought he was really good in the role, and hopefully we'll see him in more stuff. Maybe he'll pop up in future Jordan Peele movies. They'll have a cool collaboration going on, like Quentin Tarantino or Samuel L. Jackson. You know, other great people out there or making a cool thing. Who knows?
Well, he is in Nope. He's going to be in his next film.
Is that really what the movie is called? It's called Nope.
Well, I think what it's a reference to is, you have a character who is in a scary scenario or like, let's go check the basement. You have the character go, nope. Like that. I think it's a person that doesn't want to go in the basement. Like, nope, you can go down there. Yeah, it's a play on that line of dialogue. So I think that's kind of cute. But he most recently was in Black Panther. Where he played, I forget his character's name, but he was one of the, that's it. Thank you. And he sided with Killmonger in that movie. And he most recently won an Academy Award for Judas and the Black Messiah, which I have not seen that, but a lot of people say his performance was great. So he's been in things since Get Out, but I don't know of him in anything before. He probably was in something. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah. Any other? I was gonna say I'd seen him in stuff before Get Out. He was in Sicario as Emily Blunt's partner. On
shit! I totally fucking forgot. Wow. I totally forgot.
Yeah, that was him. He was on an episode of Black Mirror, which I think is how he got cast as Chris in Get Out. And the thing I most remembered him from beforehand, this is such a fucking sorry place to know him from. He was in Kick-Ass 2. As Black Death, which was one of Christopher Mintz-Plass's like minions who followed him around. So when I saw what? Yeah, that was him. And
why would you work for McLovin?
I know, right? Yeah, I think he gets his eyes gouged out by Hit Girl at one point too.
Jesus.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so that was where I knew him from. So like, that guy's gonna be the lead in Jordan Peele's movie. Cool. And like, I was really impressed with the range that he was able to display, and it's the movie that made me go, I got to keep an eye on this guy for future stuff because he's just that great in this movie. And naturally, I'm gonna feel protective and gravitational towards any character named Chris. So I enjoyed him in this quite a bit.
Yeah, I thought he was great. I think because I remember he was nominated. I remember when he was nominated for Best Actor. People were saying like, "Why was he nominated for that role?" It's like, there's a lot of incredible scenes with him. I think people just think the only thing they remember him is like the more comedic sequences because I think that often sticks in people's minds. But like I always point to that scene when he's talking to. I should give credit to the actress here who plays Missy. as well. Catherine Keener, who's been in a shit ton of, been a lot of stuff for years.
She's incredible.
Yeah, she's so good in this movie. We'll talk about her character in a bit. But like that scene when he's breaking down, I think is beautiful. So I've always really liked his character. Any other thoughts on Chris before we move on to the Armitage clan? Or actually, maybe let's talk about the Armitage clan because they're so fascinating to me. But any other thoughts on Chris?
Chris is badass. Just him taking whatever sharp thing that was to the hand and just literally using it. Yeah, just using it against her. Yeah, like I can never imagine how painful that could be, yet alone using your hand that has the knife as a weapon after that. Ugh.
Yeah, stabbed her in the eye.
And he just stood there, no selling the whole thing too. Like, oh my god.
I liked his just no shits given, and at that point he just like I just need to get out of here. And I'm gonna do anything I can to survive. I loved how blunt and violent he was and throughout that entire scene, because at that point, and you cheering him on because like now he's getting his revenge on this horrible family.
That's when the movie theater got really loud, was when he started killing people.
You know, it's funny, like my theater didn't get loud. I mean, at least I can't remember. Like people were going, yeah, maybe a little bit like that, but I don't remember like super loud or anything. At least from my experience, it could be different. Again, theater experience is always different for everybody. But you know, moving on from Chris, and if anyone has anything else they want to mention with Chris, oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to say one more thing about Chris, or
please.
That I thought Daniel Kaluuya's performance was really good. You know, obviously, I think from the crying scene, or even the scene when it's him and Rose, and they're in the I think it's like the park or in the woods or something like that.
Yeah.
But I thought the character was very like frustrating because it's like it's one of those things where it's like, why don't you just leave? And I've heard people say, and I've heard other people say that bothered me.
Oh, you gone? I think your mic just got disconnected, Xavier.
Hello?
Are you good? Are you back?
Okay.
You back?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. Continue your thought.
I was but yeah, no, I know that some people were just like frustrated that he just didn't leave, and I was kind of one of those people too, but I understood why he didn't leave because he was in love with Rose, but it was just a real like frustrating thing with that. I was just like, just leave, like, you know, like something like your spidey sense must be tingling, you got that sixth sense or something, like it's just not feeling right. So I don't.
It's that whole thing. No, I can understand that. I mean, I think that's a common complaint people have for a lot of horror films. Just get out of there. Just leave. Just start walking. You like, even if a car broke down, let's just walk. We shouldn't stay here because the killer or the monster or whatever will be upon us soon. So I think it's just a common complaint for a lot of horror films. My only thing I could say, explanation, I'm not even defending the movie, but it's like, you're at your parents' house, you're with your significant other, or your significant other's parents' house. You're trying to make it work, but it's awkward. But it's like you want to go, but at the same time, you want to make sure she's happy. And so I bought why he stays around as long as he does, even despite like some of the weird shit, like with the groundskeeper and the maid, you know, fucking looking cross-eyed and everything, him just running around and everything. Like I wasn't too bothered by that. It was just like, you know, why don't you just start getting out of there now? Like, I bought it. For me, it worked. But it does work for everybody, which I think is totally fine. That's totally fine. But moving on from that, I did want to start talking about the Armitages. And, I mean, there's a lot of them. They've taken many forms. But I feel like we already talked about her to a degree. But I really want to talk about Allison Williams' performance. It's funny. You know, obviously, Daniel Kaluuya got so much praise for his performance, and rightfully so. But I feel like I wish a lot of the other cast also got, you know, maybe, I don't know, Academy Award nomination or things. But I thought Allison Williams did such a terrific job. And we see the evolution of her character, the change her character goes through in the movie. But how even in the beginning, like the first 2/3, I really bought her relationship with Chris, and I thought they were really cute. And even her introduction, it was a small thing where the movie opens up, and this is after Lakeith Stanfield is kidnapped by, we assume is Jeremy in the beginning of the film.
No, it's Jeremy, because you see his it shows that it was his car, I think, towards the end of the movie.
Right.
He kidnapped him.
Thank you. And I mean, when she's going to like the coffee shop, and she gets the pastries, and she has she's coming to his front door, and she's like, I can't put these down. She uses her head to knock on the door so he can open up. It was that's really cute and adorable to me, and I love how they're flirting and going back and forth. And how she's petting his dog, and then Chris asks her, like, have you told your parents about us? He goes, yeah. Have you told them that I'm black? And she starts joking around with him. I told him that I'm dating a black man? And they're being going, and I thought it was really adorable. And when it inevitably happens, the twist, it's but they're so good for each other. They have such chemistry, but that's what makes her so evil and such a deceptive and cruel hunter, where she creates such an authentic, beautiful relationship with each victim, and you actually I want them to get together, but then at the end it's oh my god, you're a monster. So I thought she did a great job. I was really blown away by her performance. I don't think maybe I've seen her in other things, I don't know, but this is the one that always sticks out in my mind. But anyone's impressions on Allison Williams' performances, Rose Armitage, and the character in general?
It wouldn't work without her.
What'd you say, Emily?
It wouldn't work without her.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, agree. Cassidy, what you were gonna say something?
I was just gonna say I agree with you, and also she kept me guessing throughout it, because she would have these moments where she'd commit a microaggression or something, or she would insist that her parents aren't racist and all that, and I couldn't tell if is she good natured but tone deaf, or is she hiding something? And there would be moments of discomfort, or she's arguing with them about stuff. I'm like, is it because she's part of the cover up, or is she genuinely as freaked out as he is? And it's just about the time. I mean, even when he finds the pictures and everything, I'm wondering is it because she was hypnotized and doesn't remember and all that? But when she's trying to find the keys and she keeps insisting that she's genuinely looking, that's where I'm like, okay, she's faking.
Yeah, I think that was the point. Even when we saw the pictures in the room, and it's I think it was part of the video I was watching with Jordan Peele, where people had asked him, did she leave those open on purpose? Because they cut to that little closet multiple times in the movie, and Chris sees it. That's when he actually goes into there, and she just leaves it out right there in the middle on that little chair, and he opens the box up and he sees all those pictures. What I mean, was it to the point? And when we see that for the first time, it's okay, is she just fucking with him because she knows I hope you see this, and I just want you to know what's inevitably going to happen to you. Or, or could it be that whole thing? It's wait, maybe she, as you said, Cass, maybe she is hypnotized. Maybe she doesn't know what she's doing or something. This is actually her trying to warn him. We at that point in the movie, we still think that, but inevitably, we see her for what she truly is. Any other thoughts on Rose Armitage, the hunter, if you will?
I your to the angle that she purposely left the pictures out for him to see them because she wanted him to know that we're gonna fucking kill you, or I mean,
that's my just interpretation of it.
I think it's funny.
Yeah, could be that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Allison Williams' casting works because, and I haven't watched either of these things, but before this, she was best known for playing one of the main characters on Girls, the HBO show, and also Peter Pan in that awful looking live performance show with drunk ass Christopher Walken as Captain Hook. I've never seen the whole thing.
Captain Hook.
I've just seen I've just seen the one clip with Christopher Walken doing his lines, and it's painful.
And he forgets them.
He forgets them.
I saw that.
It's so goddamn awkward. But people knew her mostly from those two things, and I think she even says this in an interview somewhere where she talked about how Jordan cast her because people knowing her from those things would add to the audience's initial sense of trust with her. It's oh, but I like that girl. She's from that show and that shitty ass live performance. There's no way that she's gonna turn out to be fucking evil and crazy. And then they pull the rug out, and she's fucking evil and crazy.
Great casting choice in Jordan Peele, then. Absolutely great.
I enjoyed the scene where she's talking to Chris's friend because
Rod.
Yeah, Rod, because he calls his phone, and she not his phone. I think it was that he calls her.
No, he calls his phone, and Rose has it because she says he left the phone there, I think.
Yeah, and like it just cuts to her sounding distressed, but she has just the straightest face, the straightest poker face ever, and is like, oh
No
god,
emotion.
no emotion at all, and like she's working him, like trying to like convince him that, oh, Chris is not here at all and all that stuff, and then she gets weird on Rod, is like, oh god.
Yeah, no, I especially that's one of my actually. When we talk about scenes later on, that's one of my favorite scenes. Like a lot of the scenes of Rod really work for me, and that one in particular, where he's like, I fucking knew it. I knew you were crazy. And wanted to record her, and then she bamboozled him. She bamboozled him multiple times.
Yep.
She's probably had this conversation with other people before, and she knows what she's doing because that's why she looks so passive the entire time, despite her tone of voice.
And they show her parents off to the background, smiling
That's
like,
right.
"That's our little girl doing
That's
her
right.
thing."
Being creepy. We've trained her well, Missy.
Yeah, which I didn't even catch the smiles they were giving until that moment. It's like they're listening to her talk about like, "Yeah, come on, Rod, I'm gonna fuck you. I'm gonna take you away."
Yeah.
And they're just like, "That's our girl."
Damn, she's good.
Just
I would
shows
love
how.
to. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, M. Xavier. Please talk.
I was gonna say that I would love to, like, when I was talking about like having a prequel, I would love to see a story on her, like on her character, to see like, was she always like that? Well, maybe she was always like this, but like, what drew her to be this crazy? Was she always racist? Or did she, so many questions to ask.
Well, it's that whole thing where you're not born racist, you're taught to be. And so I imagine it's like that. It's the family dynamic. It's just this really messed up, sick family and their beliefs. And now they've been pushed onto the children and future generations and this whole organization. I mean, that's what I would think. But no, you're right. That's why I want to eventually, if we can go back into the Knights Templar and examine them. If he chooses to in another movie, whether it's the Armitages or not, this organization would be fascinating to me. But I mean, we could move on to just the entire family in general of the Armitages. Talking specifically about Dean and Missy and their son Jeremy, and we could also talk about Roman and Marianne, and they're occupying the bodies of Walter and Georgina respectively. But I'm a big Bradley Whitford fan. I've loved him since I was a kid. Seeing him as the villain in Billy Madison, or as the dick brother in like A Sin of a Woman, like this, or even in the West Wing. He's been in so much stuff for 30 years.
He's
the
douchey boyfriend in Adventures in Babysitting at the beginning.
Wow, that's right. Man.
He's the one who comes in like, "Hey, I got to cancel," and then later on they're in the city and Elizabeth Shue sees him out with another girl, and it's like, "Fuck you, dude, really?" So
he's probably been working for probably well over 40 years at this point.
Oh yeah.
But he's that kind of actor. You can't pin him down. I mean, he does play like a lot of villainous, douchey characters, but he has played heroes before. He has played good people, even something like The West Wing. But his douchiness and his evil is so subtle initially throughout this film. But he is that stereotypical suburban, upper middle class suburban dad. Is just like, oh, I think it's good that my daughter is, dating a black man. I can learn all the urban lingo, and it's that he's so good at capturing that awkwardness.
It's so cringe whenever he says certain things like, "I would have voted Obama for a third term." It's like, that's such a cringe thing to say.
Yeah, but it's so realistic at the same time. It's like, because we've heard people talk this way.
Yeah.
And it just works. And so I really loved his performance. And then when he goes on that fucking monologue at the end of the movie, where he's like by the fireplace and he gets really, "We are much like fire. It will go out eventually. We have found a way to change all that." And I was like, "Are you having a monologue?" I thought he was very amusing throughout the entire film. And we can just go down the line. I mean, impressions on Bradley Whitford's character of Dean Armitage.
He was really good. I really liked it.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think he served his purpose well throughout the movie. And then we get to probably what the most interesting member, because I feel like each person in the family is an expert at something. I don't know if this is what Jordan Peele intended it to be, but I feel like, because Bradley Whitford, he's the one who knows the surgery. of replacing the people's minds. Like he does the auction thing. They all come to his house, and then he performs it for whoever the highest bidder is. In this case, it was Stephen Root. But then we move on to Missy, and I feel like she's a part of the played by oh Jesus Christ, Catherine Keener, where she is part of that same process. But her whole thing is like acclimating, getting the person ready for that surgery with the hypnotism and things, making sure that their mind is at a specific place. I mean, now everyone, there was all those memes and GIFs of, of everyone like spinning tea and that little spoon in that teacup and things. But her role in this movie and how she interacts with Chris, and that I think might be one of the most powerful scenes, if not the most powerful scene in the entire film, talking about his mother and how you think that it's that, again, she's towing that weird line of being seemingly caring, but also really creepy, but also kind of like putting him down, talking about like his smoking, but getting to the meat of his anxiety and his guilt with his mother, but she exploits that in such a fucked up, manipulative way, just for, the benefit of her own family. I really like that scene with her and Daniel Kahlua. Any thoughts on Missy and her process of hypnosis?
I found it like just terrifying how much like Rose, she's able to start off so affable, and she's like, she lulls Chris into that sense of, well, I don't know. It's like she's trying to be comforting or something, or she's trying to get into his head, because the thing about hypnotism is you have to be receptive to it or it's just not going to work. And he does start off very skeptical about it, but she's doing all this shit like, hey, that's my kid that you're smoking around and all that other stuff. And then starts talking to him about his mother. All the while she's doing the thing with the tea. And it takes the concept of hypnotism to this terrifying level where she is manipulating him into a state where he'd be receptive to it and controlling him that way. It goes beyond just regular mind control. It's gaslighting combined with hypnosis.
That's a good point, bringing up the gaslighting. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Missy or also Dean?
I really liked Missy. I thought that this may sound weird, but I thought she was probably the most normal of the family, because I felt like Allison Rose
in a weird way.
Yeah, like she, well, maybe because she's a mother and so she has like that motherly, like
maternal,
connection. Yeah, maternal. Thank you. That maternal connection. And so, like, I was just like, I don't know. I would have been trapped, I guess. I don't know, because I would have been like, oh, okay, cool. I'm feeling what you're saying. But I also thought that scene, because like we talked about the scene, obviously, where she hypnotizes Chris, but I also thought that scene when Chris is going around killing everybody, I thought that scene, the battle between them was interesting, because it almost looked like Chris was like, I have to kill you, but I kind of don't want to kill you at the same time. And so I thought that was kind of interesting too. Whereas everyone else, he's like, hey, blow your head off, chop you up, whatever. But with her, she was more like, I don't know what to do here. And it could be the hypnotism like we were talking about, but I feel like there was more to that, more than just the hypnotism in that scene.
I read it differently, where he wanted to kill her, but I love how she immediately like went for the teacup, because that's how you control it. Because at that point, she had done it to him at least once or however many times, and where it had set in now, where she stirred the thing, boom, he'd be out or whatever. And where she went for it, and after that, she was kind of like super docile, like looking down, like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know what my next step is. And so I really liked her performance, because she's like, oh, I'm fucked. I got nothing. That was my thing. So I thought that was really, he took away her biggest weapon against him. Moving on from that, we get to the kind of the wild card of the family, I would say, which is Jeremy. But he has a specific profession. He's played by Caleb. Am I saying his name? Caleb Landry Jones. I believe that's his name.
Yeah, that's it.
And he more recently is in Finch. He does the voice of the robot in the new Tom Hanks movie. He's been in a lot of. I've seen this actor before. Plays a lot of like weird, creepy characters too. But I think he's great in here, where he kind of comes in as your very much, millennial, kind of douchey, maybe I'm still in college kind of character, where he has this overconfidence, but inside you can tell that you can see he has a lot of self-doubt and self-esteem issues. And he always tries to front himself and be like the alpha male, even though it's like, dude, who are you trying to impress? But his whole thing, I think it's interesting because I feel like he's the kidnapper, because we saw in the beginning of the movie, that's his character kidnapping Lakeith Stanfield in the beginning. And and Chris actually goes inside of his car and you see the Knights Templar's helmet, which he wore. And I feel like in the movie that Jeremy, he like really wants to be in Chris's body, not in a sexual way. Well, maybe that is the case. He's admiring him at one point when they're at that super awkward dinner where Jeremy's going on about the athletic prowess of a black man compared to a white man, describing him as a beast, as an animal, in these really derogatory terms, and eventually trying to assault him. But I feel like I'm sorry.
There's a term, well, kind of a term for it. They call it mandingoism, when like white people kind of project themselves and they kind of want to be. They're just kind of projecting themselves and their fears and whatnot into like, oh, I want to be a black person. I want to be super strong or have a big cock or
I feel like that's what he's doing in this scene, where he desires Chris's body, but it inevitably goes to Stephen Root, and I feel like I think for a lot of people like, oh, he's the craziest of the Armitages, or he's crazier, but I still feel like Rose is more insane. He's probably the most well-adjusted individual in the movie, I feel like, because even with someone like Missy,
he didn't hide who he was,
she feels like a maternal character. Like with Missy, she doesn't hide it. He doesn't. That's a good point, where everyone else is part of the facade, and you can even tell like the family at that dinner, like, all right, Jeremy, take it easy. You're gonna fucking blow this for everybody. He's almost gotten like, who gives a fuck? We're gonna do it anyway. But I feel like Rose is super far gone. And Missy, she's maternal, but her maternal stuff is just used for manipulation, which I think she probably used on her children. And Jeremy, he's like, I get like, not that he's a good person, but I feel like he's the most aware of what's kind of going on. He's kind of blunt about it. He's like, let's just fucking cut to the chase and give me the black body. That's what he is to me. But any thoughts on Jeremy Armitage and Caleb Landry Jones's performance?
He's the Joe Pesci of the movie.
Yeah, Jeremy's interesting to me because I've only seen this movie twice, once today and then the first time in the theater. And I remember walking out of the movie, loving it, but having a problem with his performance and thinking that he kind of overplayed the douchiness. But then rewatching it today, knowing what's coming, I realized, like that's kind of the point. But like, yeah, you guys bring up good points. What you mentioned about how he's the most outward and he's not trying to hide who he really is, but it's also because he's the red herring. Because he comes on his first scene and he's saying all these crazy, like, asshole-ish things, and you're thinking, all right, he's gonna be the boss. He's gonna be like the ultimate threat of the movie. And then later on, no, he gets taken out pretty easily. And then it turns out that Rose is the one who's the big ultimate crazy threat.
Yeah, agreed. He gets fucked up in the movie too, Jeremy. Like when they have that, because when Chris escapes using cotton and he hits him in the back of the head with the cue ball or one of the the billiards balls, and then when he right before Chris is about to leave, they have that fight, and it's fucking brutal because there's no doubt he caved Jeremy's face in. You hear the skull go at that one point, but I loved how realistic that fight scene felt to me. That I don't know, I got it.
It's ironic because he brought up the whole the MMA thing, and they're doing like this like complex like fight with MMA.
Mm-hmm. And I think there was something else he mentioned in the dialogue, where I'm trying to remember the specific word. He says so often a person in a fight, because they talk about MMA fight, like you said, Austin, like they'll do the same thing, but the fighter will realize the opponent will realize that, and they will counteract it with something. And because the one guy only knows how to fight in a specific way, he's not a good fighter. Jeremy, we realize, is not a good fighter because he keeps doing the same fucking thing by kicking the door. He does that like 2 or 3 times, and then that's when Chris Reeves like he's gonna keep doing that, and he stabs him in the fucking leg with the knife. I think he stabbed Missy with in the eye earlier. So it's like, oh wow, he used Jeremy's advice at the very least, at the very end. It's the one thing Jeremy contributed. Moving on from the Armitages. Kind of want to talk about. There's 3 more characters I want to talk about. and or just performances in general. Lakeith Stanfield's character, who plays two different people in the movie. Stephen Root's character of Hudson, who is the one that eventually buys Chris, and then Rod finally. But talking about Lakeith Stanfield, he's the person we open up the movie with. And I even love his dialogue where he's trying to find this girl. Who do you imagine he's talking about? You think that's Rose? I'm guessing that's Rose who he's looking for in the opening of the film. Like, he had met that girl. He's trying to find her, but he's not used to being in the suburbs. Suburbs are creepy. And before he's eventually grabbed by
doing a major no.
Caleb.
Walk around.
He's
I'm
eventually
thinking that it's sorry. I was just gonna say I think it's a different girl because because the way the father described the area, he said like the houses are like way down. So I don't know, maybe that seemed like a well populated area. So that's why I was thinking that it was a different person. Maybe someone that Jeremy knew.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, or it could have been just Jeremy just saw him and goes like, I want him. He was just a hunter, just on the prowl. So I was always kind of curious about that for me. But I mean, he plays he plays his role. It's like, I'm like, well, I'm going to be doing my white voice the entire part of the movie. And his entire personality changes. But I love that because it's both funny and also horrifying when you realize what's kind of happened to him.
And it's a precursor to his role in Sorry to Bother You, where he also has to do a white voice.
Yes, he has to do the white voice. Yeah, exactly. But any thoughts on Lakeith Stanfield's performance? And just, I mean, his character sadly is, I mean, he gets fucked in the movie. I mean, his body is just used by this other person at this point. It's sad. And he's the one who says the title of the film, Get Out. Which I think is
I do like the beginning because he's like, oh, I don't know, this whole place is weird, and then he sees the car,
and he immediately turns around.
Yeah, like this today is not the day. Like literally, the stuff that he's saying, we could all relate and say the same thing. Like, no, I'm out of this.
It's that horror movie dialogue of the self-aware person who knows they're in a horror film.
He was the sacrifice of the first sacrifice of the movie.
Yeah, but his role is to like to make that awareness that this is not right at all.
See, he sets the tone of the film of what's about to happen. So no, I really like him. I like his interaction with Christopher Washington later on, where it's good to see another. I think it was another brother here, but he's like he is not another brother, Chad, obviously. And his role also sets up an important element where you can somehow reverse, at least temporarily, the effect of the coagula surgery, where with a specific flash is made into the person's eyes, the person is brought back from the sunken place, at least temporarily. But yeah, I just really like that. I was like, oh, cool. So they used him not only as a cool piece of body horror, because this is a body horror movie when you think about it. It really is. But also explaining some of the lore and the mechanics of the world. So yeah, he's a very interesting character and sadly a tragic one. But then moving on from that, we get to one of my favorite character actors of all time, Stephen Root, where you might not be familiar with him, but he's been working for, again, he's one of those guys. I've been doing this for 40 plus years at this point. Famously plays the crazy guy in Office Space. Don't take my stapler. Don't take my red stapler. He's that guy. He was in Dodgeball, true American underdog story.
Oh, for love.
Yes. And he's in Barry. I mean, he's the voice of Bill in King of the Hill.
That's what it is, yeah.
So yeah, he's
my! I did not realize that's a now.
Yeah. Now he's
really?
been like, it's him.
Oh yeah.
He's a super underrated actor, and he does dramatic work and comedic so well. But I liked his performance in the movie. And he's that character we're introduced to where it's like, oh, this guy. He's not like the rest of these people because they have that wonderful conversation. Him and Chris have that wonderful conversation about photography and how he's like, listen, you gotta forgive them for their ignorance. It's just the way they are. But he even though he says all the right things, but it still believes but I still want your body, man. I want those eyes. He's obsessed with that. And what his character, and I talked about it earlier, it's the perception of the advantage of being this individual, this black person. Because even Chris asks him, like, why black people? He goes, I don't fucking know. I don't know. Maybe there's something about you that they really like, but I want you for your eyes, man. Those beautiful black eyes. So I like him in the film, and how he also explains, and he gets the hard task of having to deliver a lot of exposition of explaining, like, okay, dummies, if you didn't get it at this point, here it is. Before they do the surgery with him, and I think he handles that really well. Because sometimes that can get really boring, and that's kind of frustrating for an actor. But the way in which he delivers it, with that kind of aloofness, carefreeness, like, I'm still your buddy, even though I'm going to be inside you. But he also has that menace. But any thoughts on Stephen Root's character of Hudson?
I thought his character was really great. Like you said before, at first I was like, oh yeah, this guy gets it. Like this guy's gonna, save us, or be help us get out.
Voice of reason. Yeah.
Yep. And and then it turns out he's just as bad as everyone else. And then and so when he's explaining it, and then when he says it's like, I don't care, I just want your eyes. It's real like shitty, just a nonchalant way of just thinking about things, not thinking about the repercussions. Like
this person's an object, which has been brought up before by a lot of you guys tonight. So
I kind of see it as a the vision thing was taken away from him early on, and he just wants to see again. Yeah. Which is, it's sad, but at the same time, it's like he's doing it in the expense of paying money just to get Chris's body, and it's really fucked up. Even though
it's appropriation.
Yeah,
it's literal appropriation of this man's, not in this case his culture, but of his body. But that's what it's clearly supposed to be. It's an allegory for that, which is pretty clever on Peele's part. And then I think we can, unless anyone else has some, all the characters we've talked about, is there anything else anyone wants to bring up? Casfe?
Well, with Stephen Root's character, I just find it interesting when he says the thing about, oh, I could care less what your skin color is. It reminds me of the types of people who just want to ignore social justice as a whole, even though they are actively benefiting from other people's oppression. And I thought it just was a very solid piece of symbolism there.
Yeah, which is what he is. He's benefiting from it.
I feel like it's when some people say, I don't see color. It's kind of like that ignorant way of thinking about things.
It is weird too, because going back to Andre's character, like he says, I haven't felt the full African American experience because I haven't left the house. It's like you're just afraid to be treated just like any other person, like any other black person out there. That's literally how I feel like most of them are gonna end up being.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. Look, yeah, that might be implied. What they just live the rest of their lives like that. It's like, yes, you have this new body, but you can't go anywhere, and they never get to truly feel that experience, which I think that's pretty interesting and funny. But I think we can move on to the final character and kind of the fan favorite. You can almost say they're the comedic relief, but they do it incredibly well. And that is the character of Rod, played by Lil Rel Howery. Howery is how you say his name? And
I think so, yeah.
I feel like because of this movie, he started to pop up in fucking everything, whether it's like a small role. I'm sure he was in other stuff before this, but now I'm like, okay, I see this actor everywhere now. But he plays the important role in the movie where yes, there's a lot of humor already, but you also need some of those really big laughs. And he's not in the movie a lot. He's actually he's not on screen with anyone until the very end of the film. He's mostly just by himself or with some other super tertiary characters at one point in the movie. But he's mostly through phone conversations.
And the dog.
And the dog, that's true. And the dog makes it, guys. Don't worry, the dog is not killed. Appreciate
Thank God.
But I love that initial kind of, it shows establishes the friendship between Chris and Rod, and his also relationship with Rose when they're in the car and they're driving and things. And I love that dynamic and how they're doing that flirtatious kind of thing, even beginning with Rose. I think it's quite funny. But my favorite scene, it's one of, I mean, he has a lot of big moments in this film, but when he is starting to like, okay, there's something fucking weird going on. And when he calls Rose that first time, and he almost kind of playing it being really serious. And it's like, when he puts her on hold and he's like, I knew that bitch is lying. I knew she was lying. I'm going to record you. And I love that, but she anticipates that. But, and of course, at the police station. I'm sorry?
Did you know a lot of his lines are ad-libbed on the fly?
I did not know they were ad-libbed. That's amazing.
Yeah, he did a lot of ad-libbing just on the fly there, so.
It works perfectly. It feels so natural. It works for the scenes itself. But, I mean, he's a super fun character. And, I mean, then he goes to the police, tells them the whole story, which he's not wrong. I mean, he's only wrong about maybe I guess not really the sex stuff either. In hindsight, he's actually right about he's like the Jamie Kennedy of the movie, if you will, kind of comparing him to Randy of Scream series, where he figures out everything.
Yeah, he's not the dumb friend that stands by and does nothing. Like he's like, oh wait, like sees the sorry, sees the guy, picture of the guy. I'm like, this dude's from Brooklyn. He didn't dress like this, and starts to unravel shit. Though, like, hang on, something's wrong here. My friend's been kidnapped. He's gonna be turned into a sex slave. We need to do something. That's
He figures it out. He absolutely he figures everything out, and he gets the big heroic moment at the end where he saves his friend, and which got the biggest cheer from when I saw it. When it's like it was we all went from like oh no to like oh thank God it's Randy. He came in there at the end, so he is I think he's a really beloved character in this film, and anytime he popped up on screen, and he was in it I think just the right amount. Like maybe he could have been in it more, but. Every time there was a scene with him, it always felt earned because we just got done with some tension or some awkwardness or some horror. And it was like almost like a little relief every time. It happens like, I guess, 4 times in the movie. But any other thoughts on Randy and little Rel Howery's performance?
We need a Rod in our lives.
Or Rod, excuse me. Yeah, definitely. Someone to have your back the entire time.
TS motherfucking A.
Yeah.
Great line.
Due respect for the TSA, like the one good thing they've ever done.
That's true. And the other thoughts?
I love that. What was it? So the whole scene when he's talking to Chris, where he's like talking about the sex slave, his like sex slave idea. It felt like in any other movie it would go on too long and it'd be like, okay, we need to cut this. But when he was doing it, it seemed like it was like. It was going by smoothly and it didn't like bother me too much.
No, yeah, I was never bothered by any of the comedy or even his scenes in the movie. I'm sure they edited certain things, and the editing in the movie is actually impeccably well done because that also, I mean, the pacing is so good in the movie, and usually that's because of some really quality editing that's being done. So yeah, I loved all the scenes like that.
I also like the scene when he's I like Erica Alexander. In the scene when he goes to the police station, because just her subtle comments, because she's like, like this guy's from when he's like, oh, this guy's from Brooklyn. Would you see anyone from Brooklyn dressed like that? And he's like, well, he's with a woman 20 years older than him. Of course he dresses like that. Just her subtle comments at the scene I thought were great too.
Speaking of her subtlety, there was another thing where he goes on and on and on about the circumstances of what's happening with Chris. And she goes, and what's the big deal? What are you trying to say? And he goes, well, they're white. And she like looks down. Suddenly it's like, oh, and it's just that great moment. We're just like, oh, this shit's serious. But then of course she doesn't take it seriously in the end. They all laugh at him. It's that subtlety right there. She did a great job.
Yeah, I think at the end she's like, yeah, those white people are gonna get you. And while everyone's like laughing and shit.
Yeah, it's true. They were trying to get, at least Chris that in that case. But I kind of, is there any other characters? Those are the ones that I was thinking of. Those at the forefront of my mind when doing this discussion. But is there anyone else you wanted to mention, or like another moment, or a theory, or speculation that you have in regards to anyone else in the movie? Okay.
Well, Georgina's fate was pretty sad.
Oh
yeah.
I'm glad you brought those up, Casfae. I totally forgot to talk about Jesus Christ. Yeah, Georgina and Walter. Now let's just a brief moment. So other than Lakeith Stanfield's character, we do see other people have been lobotomized, and these were also victims of Rose, because they're in the pictures. Walter's in the picture along with Georgina. And so we saw that Rose was also hunting female victims as well, and where both of their fates are so tragic, and because the grandmother, Marianne, she occupies the body of Georgina. And that was one of the scenes that sold the trailer for a lot of people. That no, and then she starts crying because it's that person trying to escape, that who was the real Georgina. And that was so sad. And then everything we saw with Walter and him escaping, but him killing himself and also killing Roman, respectively, since he occupies his body as well. But I'm so I can't believe I forgot to bring them up. So thank you again, Kazfade. But yeah, those actors I think did such a great job. And they all had those super awkward moments, and like Georgina fucking with Chris's phone, always unplugging it so he won't be able to contact the outside world, or Walter just
running at him.
So yeah, running at him, which again another famous scene from the trailer, which has been parodied now. And it was parodied in fucking but Boo too, Medea Halloween, among other things.
It was?
It was, yeah. There's a scene with Joe. I see this in the movie, and he runs at this Leatherface-esque character with a chainsaw. It's like, never mind, and he runs away. But it's does anyone have any thoughts? Or Cassie, you brought it up. I don't know if you wanted to get into more details about Walter and Georgina, respectively.
Well, that scene with Georgina, apologizing for the phone and everything, and, Chris tries to relate to her and says something about, I get nervous when there's too many white people around, and that's what, sets her off, I noticed on rewatch. That's the thing that gets her crying, and then Marianne regains control and is like, oh, no, because it's she wants to warn him.
Yes.
And that part where he hits her and he goes back for her because he knows she's in there, but he ultimately can't save her.
Yeah, it's her fate is incredibly sad. You're right, because that's where Marianne. She's like, no, I'm in control. You're right. Yeah.
I noticed that the grandparents, this is on rewatch, that the grandparents were greeting the house guests when they were coming to the slave auction party there at the beginning. I didn't notice on my first watch. I was like, oh yeah, because they're in their bodies, and I was like, you kind of put two and two together. Did they ever really explain why she just kept unplugging his phone, or was that the grandma? She didn't really seem like she knew what a smartphone was.
No, I always felt like she didn't want him to contact the outside world. They want to isolate him. That was the whole thing where why Rose didn't want Chris to give over his ID to the police officer to have and to record, because of they want a paper trail. They don't want any contact. They want to isolate, and so they can perform the auction and then the manipulation process and then the surgery. I feel like that's what that was. I mean, I don't know if it's said directly. That's how I read it as. She kept unplugging his phone so he wouldn't keep calling and telling people like, there's a lot of weird fucking shit going on around here. Again, to eliminate any type of trail that leads back to them. At least that's how I figured it out. That's what I figured it is. Moving on from go ahead.
This was a idea that I had that I just came up with, where I think that Georgina, she might have been the first surgery, because it seems like with her character, it seemed like with Lakeith Stanfield's character, in order for him to escape, he needed to be get flashed in the eye. Whereas Georgina, she was struggling, she was struggling when she was pouring the tea, and then when Chris was when they had their one-on-one conversation. So I don't know if that's been a theory before, but yeah, I think she might have been the first person to do it, and maybe now since they've had it so long, it's some screws are loose or something.
That's a good point, because she even without the flash, she's coming out, and so. And there's even other scenes where she's acting a little derpy. There's the one scene where she's pouring the drinks and it spills everywhere. Or maybe it could also be that maybe it's not it doesn't last that long. I don't know. But that's an excellent theory. I never considered that.
Yeah, at some point it starts to get kind of shaky, and then you have to move the brain to a new black body.
Yeah.
Jesus. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Good point. Anyone else have any thoughts before kind of wrapping up and going to our favorite scenes in the movie?
Just kind of what Chris Ayers a little bit said, that this is probably not the first person they've done it to, because they were older people, so they've probably been a few others, because these people seem pretty young,
Yeah.
Georgina and Roman. So it's probably it might be implying that this might be like this might have happened to other people before them.
Oh, definitely. I feel like it is. I always felt like that Roman, before he's in the body of Walter, was doing this surgery for other people. It could be that, and then he passed it down to his son. That's why you even have Bradley Whitford passing this down to Caleb Landry Jones, because he's supposed to be involved in the operation before he's killed, or assaulted by Chris. And so I feel like this. Yeah, but it also could be. Yeah, it could have been where Georgina is just one of the first ones they did it for, or. It's a surgery that didn't go very well. Didn't really take hold as well as it could have, or it should have.
The older brains.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, moving on from just the characters, kind of wrapping up here, talking about our favorite scenes, and I'll just start. I mean, just very basic. I mean, we've covered a lot of these scenes just through our conversations talking about these characters. I feel like, but I really like the opening, setting the tone of the movie. The kidnapping of Lakeith Stanfield's character, and playing that fucking music too. That I forgot what it's got that. I always think of it like a transatlantic music from the 1930s or 40s. Something about that. Yeah. What the fuck is Jordan Peele's obsession with rabbits and everything? My lord, this movie and then in Us, I'm sure rabbits are going to play some
Rabbits
role in
feet or Tarantino's thing.
I don't know. Could be a fetish. Could be anything.
I think rabbits are just like pure or something because they're white.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
I know. I guess that's been a part of it. I'm sure he's answered the question before, but yeah, rabbit stuff is always involved in his movies. Or it's a consistent thing that pops up, an object or an animal. But I really like the opening, the license scene, because I didn't even have the license scene in there first, but then like years later here, I was like, oh my god, that's so fucking clever. And it's one of those scenes that improves over time, and you realize what's actually happening. It's like, oh, that's awesome. I love the cleverness. The no scene with Georgina. And where, and it ends that scene because it's so fucking weird and horrifying, and it's like, what the hell's going on? And Chris has the absolute perfect line going, that bitch is crazy. She's fucking crazy. And it's great because that's what the whole audience, we're all thinking. He's very much the audience avatar. Rod's talk with Rose, I thought was so funny. And of course, his talk with the police. And then, finally, the ending scene, because it's so cathartic when you're seeing him escape and get each family member back one at a time. It's beautiful, and just burning that fucking house to the ground finally. But anyone else want to say, like, I guess we can go down the line just to wrap it up. This could be like your favorite scene, any other general thoughts that you had on the movie. But we'll start with we'll start with Xavier this time. Xavier, your favorite scenes and kind of like wrapping up. What do you think of this film? Your rating, if you will.
I mean, I would give it a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, better than sex, whatever. It was fun talking about this movie with you guys, and you said all the, like, most of your favorite scenes are also my favorite scenes too. I also like that it seemed like almost every character in this movie or every actor got a standout performance, like, from like whatever it is. They got a moment. It wasn't just like, Daniel Kahlua gets his moment and Allison gets her moment. It's like everyone got something. So, but yeah, love the movie. And yeah, it was fun.
Nice. Cassie, about yourself?
I completely agree. Like, I love this movie. I love the rewatchability of it, all the different nuances of each performance and the scenery and the imagery. And I also love at the end how audacious it is, like in a good way, like how satisfying the kills are, and how in this movie, like, all of the gory death scenes are with characters who are definitely villains.
Yeah, deserve it. Yeah, good point. Thunder Lee, about yourself? How do you feel about it?
I completely enjoy this film. Like I said before, when I first saw it, it creeped me out for a couple of days. But like coming out of like that movie, I had two favorite scenes. It was the hypnotize scene where he gets put into the, what was it called, the sunken place,
Sunken place. Yep.
and the bidding for Chris, because we didn't know the situation. Like it was getting weird and weirder.
You know what they're doing.
Yeah, and then when the father said, "Yeah, we're gonna play some bingo," and then we find out the bingo is just an auction, and it's like, oh, now we understand what's going on here. Like that's, and not only that, like that's, no word was spoken in that scene. It was just all hand gestures, which was, I kind of have those moments where I like stuff that's not spoken, that is just pure action.
Yeah, it's I the only thing I could get from, because it was all done with hand gestures and like the bidding, and I can only think like this is how the organization does it, that this has been passed down for generations and they just adhere to this tradition as we do with the silent auction or something. Yeah, it's ominous and it's creepy, and they use the way they use music in that scene, I think is very well and very effective. So yeah, no, great pick. No, that's a great pick for seeing. So maybe we mentioned it, but just the how ominous it is, I think is cool. Chris Ayers, about yourself, sir. Your favorite scenes, and just wrapping up.
Sorry if my teeth chattering is coming through, because I've been drinking like an ice cold soda, and there's a fan going on right above me. So I am so fucking cold right now.
No, you're good.
Yeah. Plus,
do you need a moment? Do you need a moment, and we can come back to you?
No, I'm good. Plus, fall Chicago weather. Yeah, I think this movie it's an instant classic. It's such a great example of somebody like jumping headfirst into territory that they've never explored before and absolutely like perfecting it right off the bat. And yeah, there's so many incredible moments that you've already mentioned. There's some moments that watching it again like really hit me like on an emotional level. Like when Chris is trying to drive away and he runs over Georgina, and then he keeps saying to himself, no, and then he flashes back to when he was a kid and how his mom died from getting hit by a car, and then just being there injured and dying the rest of the night, and how that traumatized him, and that's what ultimately causes him to go back and grab Georgina. Because if they hadn't had that setup there, you'd be like, whoa, what the fuck, he's being stupid. But then it's like, I get it. I get what his thought process was behind that. And that's what I love about this movie, is that it's so tightly constructed and everything has a reason to be there, and it feeds into, I think it's an almost perfect movie. Like, the one critique I would have is a super small nitpicky one that really doesn't matter, which is there's a couple shots of CG fire that look really fakey to me. But that's seriously like just about it. Everything else is so well done, and it's so well acted, and it's so smart and clever in how it's written and put together. Yeah, I love this movie.
Nice. Awesome. What about yourself, sir? Favorite scenes and your general wrap-up thoughts?
So, actually, Emily earlier said my favorite scene. I'm sorry for taking this from you. The scene where it's the creepiest scene, I think, in the movie is the scene where she's eating cereal with the milk and the cereal separated, just, while looking at the end of the college basketball. I even remember my dad, it's like, 'cause I don't know sports. I don't know the sport. But I remember my dad, he's like, oh, it's college. She's looking at college basketball. I'm like, oh, okay. And she's basically like looking up sheep to the slaughter, and it's very creepy and very unsettling.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's creepy. It's unsettling. It's also kind of funny. The same kind of, because how weird she is. And there's even some more subtlety to that scene, because you see that she put all the pictures, like she keeps in that little closet area. That's where Chris finds them. But I think they're in behind her on her bed. If you look behind her, then in that scene, I think all the pictures are up there, like in frames and stuff.
Yeah,
she put them back on the wall, so it's like her trophies. So it's there's so much detail in that, just that one fucking shot, which is so disturbing. So great pick. And just wrap up your final thoughts on the movie as well.
Me or Emily?
No, you, Osik. I'm sorry.
Anyway, my final thoughts is better than sex, full price, 10 out of 10. I do really like this movie. I think it's you could probably like watch it 10 times and get something different from it each time. It's well paced. It makes it for a horror movie. It makes you feel good, which is something you shouldn't say.
Yeah.
It's like it makes you think, but it also feel good is the best way to put it. But it makes you excited because you're thrilled and you want to know what's going to happen next. And it's also very grounded and very close to a lot of people's real life experiences. So,
yeah, no, fully agree. Well, I would even say it has a feel good ending where they win.
Mhm.
They win. They're as far as we know, the Armitages are defeated. So, and then you're like, oh, it's like you can exhale now. Didn't leave you with a bad feeling. So, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. Emily, final person, wrapping up your favorite, some of your favorite scenes, and just your final thoughts on the movie.
The hypnotizing scene where he's put into the void and whatnot. The kills are great. Just right amount of gore and the fucked up nature of how he escapes. The party scene, I really relate to that very well because pretty much all the time, I'm the only black person in the room in my everyday life and whatnot. So I relate to that really well. But yeah, it's such a great movie. It's sharp, it's savvy, it's hilarious. It can be scary sometimes, tense, very uncomfortable and whatnot. But everybody should watch it at least once if they've never seen it before and give it a try if you like thriller. I'd say it's more of a thriller than horror. But
I think it's a good gateway horror film. I think people might like this. You want to introduce people to the genre because it's it's also very funny. I think it's very comedic and it has those social messages in there as well. So yeah, I think it works it works as a thriller to a degree too. So it accomplishes a lot. It's a genre bending film, and I'm a huge fan of it, as you guys know. It's one of my favorite movies of the last decade, and it's one that I think everyone should at least give a watch. So full agreement with you guys. But that wraps up Discourse episode 7, focusing on the film of Get Out. Maybe someday we will return to the works of Jordan Peele and talk about Us and maybe his new film Nope or anything else he's been involved in. But for now, guys, we'll just have to say bye. Bye-bye. We did it. Yay.
yeah.
Very nice. Very good.